Welcome to the Admissions Club podcast. My name is Elizabeth West. I am CEO and founder of EWC Consulting in Charlotte, North Carolina. We do things a little differently at this podcast. Of course, we're going to talk about admissions trends, applications, but we're also going to talk about a more holistic view, real issues that face college students today, issues with neurodiversity, or just trying to make a college campus your home. So pull up a chair, get yourself a hot cup of coffee or tea, and make yourself comfortable, because you are always welcome at this club. Hi, and welcome back to the club. Today we have a very special guest, and he is one of our own. So, Rob, welcome to the club. And if you could introduce yourself, and then we'll get started with our chat.
Yes. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Gay. Everyone calls me Rob. I want you to do the same, and I'm super excited to be here and get a little chat in with you.
Yay, great. And Rob works at EWC as our senior educational consultant. But he's also had a wealth of experiences at a number of colleges that we're going to talk about today. And so, like we like to do at EWC, we like to just sit around and talk about admissions because we're geeks like that. And it's been our entire career. So, Rob, what do you love about admissions? I can tell you what I love, but what do you love?
There's so many things. I've always been a relationship builder, a relationship driven person, and there is something about this particular process that I think is so overwhelming and so delicate and uh, so impactful, right? This is you're starting a new chapter in your life, and I think that understandably that with that comes a lot of stress and uncertainty. And I've just always been the type of person, if I have something that others might need or might be of benefit to them, I want to share that. So it's just admissions work. College is something that changed my life, and I know how much it can change others' lives. And so I've just found this process to be, or the opportunity to work with families and students through this process to be really fulfilling for me. I think it's nice when you can give parents a little uh, sigh of relief and let them know that they're not walking this path alone, and give students a little confidence in what they're doing too.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I tell you, you've worked at a range of schools. And so when we talk about your career in admissions, you and I share a school that we've both worked at, which is Carolina's College of Health Sciences. And admissions looks different there compared to Duke. You worked at Duke. And so tell me about, if you look back over that path, like what connects those roles? Because you're doing different admissions experiences, but what connects those roles together?
I wish it was I had an insightful answer. I don't know if I do. I think for me, it's always been the student. It's in any case, you're always trying to read an application and get to know a student's story and who they are, and trying to understand their ability to come to your institution and be successful and find it rewarding. And so for me, it's always, I'm a naturally curious person, and so I've always loved kind of that process of putting the puzzle pieces together, to paint a whole picture of who that student is and what they might contribute to our institution and what they might be able to take away from our institution. And so that's always been, and you're right, I've worked at many different institutions with many different review processes and admissions requirements. But at the end of the day, everywhere I've worked, it's always been about my job has always been primarily to get to know the students and understand their circumstances and advocate for them. And that's something that is something I take very seriously, and something that I really enjoy is being an advocate for people, especially throughout this process. So I think the student is something that's always just been consistent no matter where I've been.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder, because I've worked at a number of colleges, but I've never worked at a Duke, you know what I mean? And so it's like
Yeah.
I wonder when did you have to get used to the culture of a more competitive college? And was that a real transition for you?
Yes, especially at, a place like Duke, where, one thing that we used to always tell people is that, with at a school where you have a 6% admit rate, you do the math, you're saying no to a lot more people than you're saying yes to. And as, a people pleaser, that's kind of difficult. I want to say yes to everyone, and the reality of working at a school with a small admissions percentage, or admit rate, is you're saying no to incredibly qualified students. I mean, students that I mean are doing far and above what I was capable of at that age. And so you do have to kind of shift that mindset to really looking at different factors and understanding the culture of a school and their academics and their student life, and really then understanding that student as well. And whereas at other places, I think that line can be a little bit more distinctive. But I think, especially at elite colleges where you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of students applying for only a couple of hundred spots, you see that time and time again. And so, really being able to build those relationships with students, and letting them know early on in the process, hey, you can do everything right in this
Mhm.
process. And I'm putting air quotes there because there's no right way to apply to a college. But I think that, understanding what students are bringing to that process and whether or not they're a fit at that school, that those can be many different things that you're having to evaluate. It's not just about the GPA or their involvement. You really want to make sure that this is going to be a good fit for them, and that gets a little bit tougher as you kind of move up that ladder, as far as admissions rates go. But yeah, I think that's what I've usually found with that process.
Yeah, and it's funny because we love students, and you and I have talked
Mhm.
about this several
Yeah.
times that it's why we do what we do. And so I, I love stories. I love to hear about stories about students. We never tell names, but um I want to tell you about a time a student surprised me, and I want to hear about a time a student surprised you. So, I was at UNC Charlotte, and I remember talking to this student several times, and then I got their transcript, and their transcript indicated that they would not be admissible. And I had already had a relationship with this family, even, and then I was like, okay, it's a no for now. It's a no for now, but I'm going to give you the pathway to be admissible. And you
Mhm.
always cross your fingers and toes when you give somebody that transfer advice. And then when um, that student came back and that student was admissible and also just flourished at the college. It was a situation where the student was not flourishing in high school but came back
Yeah.
and I mean an honors student just I blew everything out of the water because he felt confident, he felt strong, and he felt supported. Um, so that's a surprise, because there's a lot of things along the way that could derail somebody. But what's a
Yeah.
story about a student that surprised you?
Oh, I love that story because I do think that that is so much of the work that we do is, it's a no for now, but this doesn't have to end that relationship. Like there's still a journey here. And I'm thinking about so many different students. There was one in particular, and I think this goes to show even how at an institutional level, the predictors that we're looking at can sometimes just be so off. And there was a student that was admitted and had reached out to me. They were actually independent, so they had emancipated from their family and their guardians, and were really going through this process alone. And they were working part time, but they did not have enough money to pay the full enrollment deposit. And I remember requesting with the business office that we waive the enrollment deposit. And however, they didn't meet certain indicators for the actual waiver itself. And not wanting to take no for an answer, I came back and I said, I really think this is a student that we deserve to take a chance on. And it was politely told to me, we use this as a indicator of a student's ability to pay once they're here. And I'm like, okay, but we also provide students with an abundance of resources when they're here for on-campus jobs or connecting them to off-campus job. I was a student here and I understand how this process works. And that just, it didn't sit right and in my soul and my spirit. And luckily I had another lady that worked in the business office who had been kind of part of this conversation over the course of a week. And her and I, keep in mind, I was a admissions counselor at this point, and if any of you out there listening have ever worked in admissions, it's not a super lucrative field. So we were balling on a
No.
budget, okay? And me
Yep.
and this business office person, we actually went half and half to split that for the student so that they could get admitted. And that student is now in law school. And
Oh
so
my
and I'm still
gosh.
in touch with her. She was a first generation Latinx student from rural North Carolina,
Wow.
and to be living the life that she is now is not something that she ever thought for herself. And to think back to that moment when it was an enrollment deposit of what, $300 maybe, that
Yeah.
could have kept her from this point, which we don't know that. I'm sure she was an incredibly bright student. She would have found her way. But I feel very proud in that moment to be able to be in that place to step up for that student. And so that's just something that has always stuck with me. And I will say this, I didn't invent that. I was given that same kindness when I was in school. And so to be able to kind of pay it forward was really fulfilling.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that because that's I mean, that's why we love you, Rob. But that's all, I mean, that is what we do and that's why we are passionate about what we do because we have in our past advocated for students. And
Yeah.
so I'd like to ask you a question about how the essay and how when you hear a student's story, how that leads into an advocacy issue.
Uh,
Right? I mean, I
yeah.
used to run admissions committees and I used to, well, when I was not so senior, I would be in admissions committees and I'd be like, okay, I just read an amazing essay. And, people would be like, you love everybody, Elizabeth. And I'm like, no, this kid is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Same.
would get, I would get caught up in their stories and yeah, and you'd advocate for them. So, a lot of times people write, and I'm in the middle of, we are in the middle of
Yeah.
the crazy time with college essays.
Hmm.
What do you think of the impact of a student telling their authentic story is
Uh,
in an,
I I don't. This is how I've always explained this. The essay portion to students is, if you're looking at that application, um, in totality, there are data, numbers, figures, right? There's your teacher recommendation, someone else's opinion of you. Your essays are your moment to advocate to be your own advocate, let your voice come through in that essay or in that application. So I really don't think, as far as a student is concerned, that there is a piece of the application that can bring more impact than an essay. And with that, I then also say to students, that does not mean that you need to write a New York Times best-selling essay. Okay. Average essays get admitted to college every single day. So it's totally okay that you're like, well, Rob, I've never been a strong writer. Well, one, that's what we're here to help you do. But the second part is that we can still, a good, strong essay doesn't need to be, a New York Times bestselling novel. But I think some of the essays that I have really advocated for and have really touched me personally. I'll give you two examples. One is actually the the best essay I've probably read that just caught me off guard. So when you're writing essays, they always say you want to grab the reader's attention right off the bat. And oh boy, did this one do that. So the essay starts, and forgive my language, it's every day, all I see are butts. Big butts, round butts, small butt. And I was like, what am I reading? You're almost to the point. I'm like, do I need to reach out to the counselor? Do they know that the student submitted this essay? And so it kind of goes on to that. And in the next line or two, she shares that she was born with a form of dwarfism, and that this is what her eyesight is all day
Oh,
long. And so she's literally putting you in her body, in her mind, in her line of vision, as she's starting this essay. And it grabbed me right off the bat. But I think the thing that was nice about that essay, and then the next essay that I was going to tell you about, is a student that wrote about the death of one of their coaches, their swim coach, and how impactful that was for them. And it was the first, significant loss that they had really had. And even in this process of applying to colleges, he finds himself thinking, what would my coach tell me? And so it was just, I think that the similarity between those two essays, and with really a lot of essays that just strike a chord with you, is that self-awareness, the introspection. It's not something that I think comes naturally for a lot of 17, 18-year-olds, as it shouldn't, but when a student is able to think back on a significant moment in their life or challenge, and really take you into their mind, and allow you to see how they were thinking. And I think it in that process, it somehow just, at least for me, it starts to build that humanity, and you start to see that student. And to me, that is what the essay does, right? I know what you're involved in. I've seen your resume, I've seen your list of activities. I can tell sometimes, at least from your transcript, those classes that you really enjoy the most. But it's the inner workings of the brain, and how you think, and where you see yourself in the world. And those are the things that I think allow me to build humanity with a student. And then that's when I'm in the committee room, and I'm like, oh, okay, meet next. I've got this great essay. And similar to you, they're always like, oh yeah, Rob, you always
yeah.
fall in love with the essays. But those are just the examples that really stick out to me, and the ones that I still remember to this day. And I'll tell you, those are students that I had in my very first few years of admissions work. But they're still with me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so that kind of brings me to a question I have because um okay, so I am one that says please don't write the sob story. Please don't
Yeah.
write number two, obstacles that you've
Mhm.
encountered have been fundamental. Although I do understand that you probably have a good story,
Yeah.
um, I was told by one of my admissions friends who works for a very, very competitive college that it
Mhm.
feels like an emotional manipulation.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, now that you told
Yeah.
me about this, I don't
Well,
know. Am I giving the right advice?
no, I think you're very right. I will say that there is, and we've talked about this for the decade that I've been in admissions. Our kind of go-to catchphrase is always like the ACL tear, right?
Yes,
The ACL
exactly.
tear that took me out of my senior year championship game. I didn't get to play, and how devastating that was. And starting out, it's a funny little quip that we like to throw around. But in deeper conversations, you do have to kind of understand. Well, for some students, that was a very challenging moment in their life, and you do kind of sometimes have to dig through the weeds a little bit to get to that. But to your point about the sob story, the one thing that I tell students is, just because you have a very challenging or even traumatic experience in life, uh, doesn't mean that that needs to be what you write about for your college essay to garner that sympathy from your admissions counselor. Because keeping in mind, we're reading, 20, 40 applications a day sometimes, and it can get very heavy. But my rule of thumb that I tell students is if there is an experience that is deeply saddening or, troubling, traumatic for you that you want to write about, make sure that you have enough emotional distance from it so
Yes.
that you can really use that to show how you grew and became a better person, a stronger person. And so that's the piece, it's not about making your story sad. It's not about the sad thing that happened to you. It's about what you did with that experience. How did you come out on the other side of that? And I think that's a lot of times where students get lost because, right, they read books that are designed to keep a reader engaged and turning the next page. That's not what the essay is about. The essay is always about you, the student. So if you're talking about a mission trip that was really impactful for you, yeah, I want to know some of the details of where you went, who you engaged with. But I don't want to know what impact you had on other people. I want to know what those people, what kind of impact they had on you, because
Yeah.
you're the one applying. So I think I always use that. And there's certainly been times where I've had the discussion of it doesn't feel like enough distances from this event to write about it yet. So let's maybe go with something else.
Yeah.
But you're not wrong at all. I think that is very valuable advice because it can, in some ways, turn around to bite you. To
Yeah.
go for the sob story, the Lifetime movie, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I did to your point, reading all of these essays, it did weigh you down if you did
Yeah.
over and over again just kept reading about these horrible things that were happening to people. And then I don't know, maybe somebody would have an advantage if it was like something hopeful and nice, and I'd be like,
Mhm.
okay, okay, here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. I mean, you've got essays that are about so many different things too. And so I encourage students, like, don't dig down deep just to find the sadness in your life to write about. I've seen amazing essays written about, a student and a project that they've explored, or a teacher-student relationship that they really struggled with and how they managed that. So there's lots of different right. That's why there's so many different prompts to allow students different avenues to write about. But no, I think you're giving out great advice there on that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell me about we've both read thousands of applications,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And when I look at the students that have ultimately been successful at the various colleges that I've been to, and read applications, I think the ones that impacted me the most were the ones they weren't the high flyers, they were the hard workers. They were the ones that had maybe tough times and uh pushed through them and did well. So, the ones that I'm thinking of and the ones that stick out to me are the ones that are the fighters. And I'm wondering, what about you? Like, what is the pattern that you see?
Um, for me, it is. I've always had. I will say, in every uh, personality assessment, Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, all of those things, True Colors, empathy is always right at the top. It's the first one. So I've always really I've found it comes very natural for me to, no matter a student's circumstances, to really try to get on their level and empathize and see life through their eyes. But I will say, I think life is a mirror, and we want to. I think we gravitate towards maybe some students that we identify with. And I was a low income first generation college student. And so to see those students that are, just breaking through the ice, and they're breaking barriers, but they're doing it with very little resources and very little support. I think that resilience belongs on college campuses, and without it, it drastically changes the culture of a college. And so, I'm thinking about, I've worked at Duke, I've worked at Davidson, I've worked at Elon, and these are all schools with a very diverse student population. But there are a lot of very I would say affluent families and students there. But those schools have each made it a priority to also have diversity of experience and life represented on their campuses. And so, yeah, think I'm with you. It's, those students that really are just kind of the shining example of coming out of a rural area where, even though you're comparing maybe this application to another one in a different state, which we don't do, but looking at it, knowing that, having that knowledge, no, this student wasn't doing all of these things, but in contrast of what is available to them, they are breaking barriers. They are trailblazing here. And so those are students that I've actually really found heartwarming over the past, I'd say, 5-ish years. I've seen college admissions offices leaning more into those types of students and really valuing those experiences. So I'm very happy about that. But I'm 100% with you. I find it very easy to relate to students.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And along those lines, there's cultural diversity, there's geographical diversity. We're looking at a lot of things in admissions, but neurodiversity, I want to,
Mhm.
because that is one of my chief passions. And, those who work with me know that, and they know how important it is to me to have our students find the right fit, our neurodiverse students. And
Yeah.
so, when you're talking about neurodiversity, how do you find it different advocating or serving a student that is neurodiverse compared to a typical student?
Yeah. You know, um, I think about, well, I'll first say that is one of the reasons why I decided to join EWC is because that is a focus that I'm also very passionate about. I was not diagnosed until I was in college. And so just looking back at my entire education, I thought, wow, how different would this have been if I had the right treatment for this? But, as it is, back then I was just rambunctious.
Yes.
um, but yeah, I think I remember you asking me during our interview, whether I had worked with those students, and I come back to that answer to say yes. And we've all worked with those students. We just don't realize it. And to be able to take the time to open up to students, I don't know if I had known prior to going into college if it's something I would have even disclosed,
Yeah, yeah.
um, because it does feel othering in a way.
Mhm.
And I think colleges have made leaps and bounds today of making sure that those students are brought into the fold, and it's just part of a standard, resource that students can receive. But I think the issue there is really being able to uh, listen to a student and what they're saying to you, because as a neurodivergent person myself, I don't think that a lot of times what I'm presenting is what my intention or my thought was behind it. And so, I'm thinking about if you're a parent out there listening and you're thinking, we're trying to get through to our student, we've gotten them tutoring, we're getting them help, we're talking with the teacher, and we're not getting the grades we want, we're not getting keep talking with your student. There is something there that needs to be discovered. And I think that's just what we have to do. Sometimes we don't even know what it is that we're trying to tell people. And so we need the people closest to us in life to kind of be our advisors and people to help us. And I think that's something that I've just found has been the most helpful with students, is to say, hey, yeah, I think if you take this class, that would really help you out. And then the student will say, and you can sense in that, okay, well, what's our hesitation with that? Are we not strong in that subject? Is it a teacher relationship? Is it a distraction in the physical classroom itself? A way that we're having to do and present the work to the teacher? There's so many different factors that come into play there. So listening, I think, and trying to get to the root of what those issues are is something that I always like to try to do with students.
And I love how you said patience and listening,
Yeah.
because it goes a long way.
Yeah.
I I can't imagine having a student who is struggling that does not want to be heard, that does not want to be listened to. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
the absolute opposite.
Yeah.
Nobody's listening to me, and I really need this help. And so, like, part of why I created EWC is because I wanted to create that soft place to land. And it's part of
Yeah.
our like brand. And but what I say to our students, what I say to my own kids is that kindness isn't always easy. There's a difference between, and we even do a presentation on it, of being nice versus kind.
Mhm.
And so what is your take on kindness kind of not being such an easy road?
It's so funny that you said that, because I don't, I'm a very, I love quotes. I like, and there's sometimes quotes just like stick with me, and so I usually have like a quote that's at the top of my brain at all times. That just this a little mantra for me for the week or the day or the 30 day, the month, whatever. And the one that has been sticking with me recently, it was, "Hope is born the minute someone chooses kindness."
Oh,
And I think in today's world, people feel hopeless. And this process, applying to college, can feel like that. You can get to that point, where you do start to feel a little hopeless of like, what are my options if I've heard no? Or, maybe your parents don't want you to go super far away. And so that's drastically changed where you're looking. There's a lot of stipulations on this. And I think it's easy for students to slip into a little bit of hopelessness, all of us. And so I think that's, for me, that is the importance of kindness. And it took that quote reminding me of that, because I had even started to notice just a little bit of jadedness in myself of this is just, life is rough and it roughs you up and you got to get tough, but you also can never forget to choose kindness. And I was listening to one of your podcasts, I think it was either a week or two ago, of micro kindness, and it's opening a door for smiling at someone,
yeah.
speaking to someone when you get in an elevator, those types of things. And so, yeah, I think kindness can never be too understated, because it does create hope for multiple people, not just for yourself. And so, yeah, I think always choosing kindness is something that's really important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, Rob, I could talk to you all day. You know that.
Same. I could
We
talk.
are just we're two peas in a pod. I think we're
We are.
related somehow. I just
We've got kindred spirits at least.
exactly, exactly. Oh, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And the wealth of your expertise is just so appreciated. I learn things from you all the time. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. And come back to the club anytime you want.
I will definitely. I look forward to it. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I've had such a fun time today.
Yay, good. I have
Yeah.
too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today at the club. Whether it was your first time or whether you are a VIP member, we are so delighted that you joined us today. If you want to know more information about what we do, please go to our website at ncewc.com. You're always welcome at the Admissions Club. We'll be here for you.